The movie starts with a woman, named Rachel Heggie, waking up to a nightmare. She sits up on the bed and picks up a black feather from her pillow. She then does some push-ups and opens up a briefcase. She wears her police uniform and gets ready for work. As she leaves for work, there's a mysterious man in the window above her apartment. Then we see a boy, named Caesar, anxiously driving a car on a road. Rachel is also on her way to the police station when she sees the mysterious man coming to a stop in the middle of the road. A black feather drops to the ground from his pocket. As Rachel is watching, Caesar comes over speeding and accidentally hits the mysterious man with his car. Rachel runs towards the car but the man is nowhere to be seen. There's some blood on the headlight of the car. Caesar gets out and Rachel arrests her. She then takes him to a police station where she works. It's her first day at work. She reports Caesar to her superior, Sergeant McGreedy, and introduces herself as well. Caesar makes a comment on Rachel, and McGreedy hits him in the stomach. Caesar vomits on her shoes. Next, we see a police couple, named Jennifer and Jack, having an intimate moment in a car while on duty. At the police station, McGreedy books Caesar for a night in a cell and Rachel empties his pockets. Rachel then tells the cops on duty to look out for the possible victim that Caesar had hit. McGreedy is watching closely at his crotch as Caesar gets undressed. Caesar then has a flashback where he is driving on a road at night and hits a woman passing the road. Rachel then takes him down the stairs to put him in a holding cell. There's a teacher, named Beswick, in the cell in front of him. Beswick is in for abusing his wife. McGreedy introduces him to Rachel and then leaves, giving the keys to her. She asks Caesar to take his arms off the bars but he doesn't obey her. So, she forces him and locks the gate. Rachel then gets back upstairs and sits with McGreedy. He shows her the report filled by Beswick's wife. Suddenly, the mysterious man appears at the station and is accompanied by Jennifer and Jack. They settle the man down and exchange pleasantries with Rachel. She then recognizes the mysterious man from the car accident earlier. McGreedy asks Rachel to call a doctor to inspect the man for any injuries or concussion. He then asks the man's name but he doesn't talk. Later we see the couple talking as the door opens and a doctor, named Hume, enters. The doctor then sees the patient and doesn't find any major injuries. The man doesn't have any form of identification on him. He just has an old diary full of names in it. As the doctor is examining the patient, he suddenly speaks and Dr. Hume starts to have a vision of his home. There is blood running down the halls and the doctor gets terrified and closes the door. Dr. Hume then returns back to reality and is scared about the secrets that the man knows. He then tries to kill the man with the scissors in his hands. Rachel and Jack restrain the doctor at once. Next, we see Rachel and Jennifer taking Dr. Hume to lock up downstairs. They imprison the doctor in a cell and leave as Caesar and Beswick pass on their comments. Jennifer takes the fingerprints of the mysterious man. He then closes his fist and we see the doctor doing the same. Afterwards, the sergeant interrogates the man. The fingerprints reveal his name to be Alexander Monroe, who had died in 1983, in a fire, with an age of 79. He tells McGreedy that he is here to collect the price of their sins before the clock strikes midnight. The sergeant gets scared of his sins and asks Rachel to take the man down to a cell. Rachel takes him down to the cell number 6. Alexander looks her in the eye and suddenly she has a flashback of her childhood where she was abused. As Jennifer is locking the gate, the man touches her hand and she drops the keys. She starts to have a recollection of her past sin where she is seen beating up a man in an interrogation room. Jennifer comes out of her memory while gasping for breath and immediately scurries away. Alex then hands over the keys to Rachel. She locks the cell and leaves. Next, we see Jennifer catching her and Rachel arrives to ask her what has happened. Jennifer rudely shuts her down and goes to sit on her desk. Meantime, Jack is on the phone trying to contact Dr. Hume's wife but the phone has been engaged for over an hour. McGreedy is watching Alex in cell 6 from a camera. He orders the couple to go check out Dr. Hume's home and asks Rachel to watch over the station as he has an errand to run. He leaves the station and we see a picture of a missing kid on a notice board. The couple then leaves the station as well, leaving Rachel alone in charge of 4 prisoners. After that, we see Sergeant McGreedy going on a drive in his car. He takes out a bottle of liquor from the glove compartment to drink. Suddenly he sees the mysterious man with white eyes sitting in the back seat but when he looks back, he isn't there. Along his way, we see him pass a bloody woman on the roadside. At the police station, Alexander is very calm as he talks to Beswick and plays with a matchbox. Meanwhile, Rachel is upstairs trying to figure out the reason why Alex is here. She picks up his diary but suddenly starts to have a flashback where her father is abusing her. She puts the few names from his diary in the police database and finds all of the people deceased. Downstairs, Alexander starts to play a mind game on Beswick and asks her about his abusive relationship with her wife. Beswick is having a pain in his jaw. Alex rubs his fingers against the wall in his cell and Beswick pulls out a tooth from his mouth. He asks Beswick to confess to his crimes, but he doesn't. Suddenly the lights in Beswick's cells go out and he stands up. Meanwhile, Jack radios back to the station and tells Rachel that they are at Hume's residence. Nobody is at home and the door is open. Suddenly, Beswick loses his mind and starts to bang his head against the bars of his cell. The alarm goes off and Rachel hurries downstairs. She opens the gate and Beswick falls onto the ground. Dr. Hume from the next cell asks Rachel to let him out so he can help Beswick. Meantime, Jennifer and Jack enter Dr. Hume's house, and we see the sergeant reaching to a stop at his home. At the station, Rachel lets out Hume so he can save Beswick's life while the couple is at Hume's residence. There they discover a body hanging from the ceiling with blood dripping on the floor. The dispatch tries to warn Rachel about Hume, but she is downstairs with Hume as he resuscitates Beswick. He looks up at Alex and speaks a few words and then dies. Next, we see McGreedy cleaning out body parts from his refrigerator. He receives a call from Rachel but doesn't answer. She then moves the body of Beswick with the help of the doctor. Meanwhile, we see McGreedy with the body of one of the missing kids in his bedroom. He then lays the body on the ground as he has flashbacks of him beating the kid to death. Back at the station, Rachel and Dr. Hume move the body upstairs and place it on a table. Jack is constantly trying to reach Rachel on the radio. She finally replies back and Jack warns him about Dr. Hume. He tells her that the doctor has butchered all of his family. Rachel quickly picks up a baton and hits Hume in the face. After a little fight, she manages to handcuff him. Then, we see McGreedy standing in front of a mirror in his bathroom while there's a dead body in the tub as well. At the station, Rachel locks up Hume again in his cell. She then asks Alex why he's here and what is happening, to which Caesar replies that he is here to collect the bills of our sins. As Rachel is about to leave, Alex starts humming a tune which reminds Rachel of her abusive childhood where she is locked up in a room. She escapes the room and starts running down the street bare feet. After calming down, Rachel calls McGreedy and tells him about the situation at the station. McGreedy pulls out a box from under his bed. He opens the trunk and takes out a shotgun. Then, we see the doctor explaining his hideous crimes. Alex then asks Caesar to remember his sins and repent while he still has time. Caesar starts to think about a girl he has hit on his way here. He didn't help her and left her for dead, fearing it may be too late for her. Alexander tells him that it still isn't too late and he can save her if only he had the guts to confess his crime. Meanwhile, Rachel picks up a few papers from the ground and the police couple arrive. They tell Rachel about the horrors they have seen at Hume's residence. They then head downstairs to talk to Hume. Jennifer takes the doctor upstairs to an interrogation room while Jack stays behind and talks to Alex. Hume tries to justify to her in his twisted way as to why he had killed his family. Alex then touches the bars where Jack has placed his hands. Jack starts to have a vision where he and Jennifer are beating up a person in an interrogation room and then kill him. He loses his mind and dashes out of the room and barges into the interrogation room. He knocks the table down and starts hitting Dr. Hume. Meanwhile, Alex is playing with a matchstick in his hand. Just as soon as he pricks his hand with the matchstick, Jack kills Hume by driving his head through the table leg. The couple then start to work on their story to cover up Hume's murder as a self-defense. Rachel has a problem with this, so the couple threatens to put the murder on her. Rachel then leaves the room to go check up on the prisoners. Caesar confesses to her about the girl he hit with his car. Alex tells him that it's futile to confess now as the girl died a few minutes ago. Rachel asks him how he knows all this. He reminds her that he was one who saved her from her abusive captor all those years ago. Rachel heads back upstairs and finds the couple planning the murder of her and the other prisoners, leaving no witnesses. She is listening to their conversation in silence when suddenly her phone starts to ring. It's Sergeant McGreedy. He is on his way to the station. Rachel places the phone on the table and doesn't hang up so the sergeant can hear their conversation. Jennifer figures it out and proceeds to take her down. They start to have an aggressive fight. Suddenly, McGreedy enters the station shirtless, holding a shotgun in his hands and straight up shoots Jack. As he is gasping for air, McGreedy shoots him in the crotch, killing him. Jennifer is hiding behind a desk. McGreedy then heads up to kill her, but she slashes his ankle and locks herself in a room along with Rachel. There are no rear exits and are trapped. They try to call for help at 911 but all operators are busy. Meanwhile, McGreedy gets a battering ram to break down the door. Just as soon as he knocks the door down, Jennifer runs for her life. McGreedy grabs his shotgun and shoots her, but they are able to run to the basement and lock themselves in it. Rachel takes off her shirt and ties it to her wounded belly. They then look outside the basement window and see Sergeant holding a tank of fuel and throwing it onto the ground. Suddenly, the fuel starts to enter the basement through the stairs. McGreedy then lights up the fuel trail outside and the fire spreads through all of the station and all the way to the basement door. Rachel picks up a few blankets. She then unlocks the cells to let out Alex and Caesar. Meanwhile, the sergeant starts walking through the fire into the station. Rachel, Caesar and Jennifer break the basin and dampen the blankets. They each take a blanket and run upstairs through the fire, but Alex stays behind. McGreedy is waiting for them to come up with a shotgun in his hands. But he misses them. Caesar breaks a window with a chair. Jennifer sees the opportunity to escape, but her foot slips and she falls onto a piece of glass which slashes her neck. McGreedy comes and makes sure she is dead. He shoots Rachel in the shoulder and then grabs Caesar by his shirt. He shoots him in the face and kills him as well. McGreedy then comes for Rachel. She grabs a fuel tank and throws it at him, which he shoots. Rachel then picks up the battering ram and smashes McGreedy's head. She finally gets out of the police station and falls onto the ground while gasping for air. Alexander then strolls out of the station as well and lights up a cigarette from his burning dairy. He then hands her the smoke and explains to her that he is the one who collects on the sins of the wicked when midnight comes. He then puts a line through the names of the people who have died at the police station tonight. The movie ends with Rachel joining Alexander on his mission to collect the debt of the sinners. Thanks for watching.